Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be participating in NEPCA's annual conference. Today I'm speaking from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. With thanks and respect, I acknowledge that I live, work, and continue to learn on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. More than ever, we need Indigenous knowledge to protect our land, water, and all living things. I would like to thank Neil Humphrey for his introduction. I would also like to thank Donna Varga for organizing this special topic, Animals and Culture, and Lance Eaton for his Zoom coaching. Today, in my talk, Pigs in a Postmodern World, Appropriating Art with a Purpose, I will introduce you to my series of over 50 artworks that emulate many well-known modern and contemporary masterpieces. Through the artistic practice of appropriation, the series draws attention to the appropriation of the pig, both as a food commodity and as an anthropomorphized character in visual culture. Working on an art intervention project at the Ottawa School of Art in the summer of 2011, I got the idea of making a lapel button with the image of a baby pig nestled in a rose, a la Anne Geddes, well-known baby photographs. To make it clear that my image was a pastiche of Geddes' work, I bought a plastic pig figurine and sparkly cloth rose from the local arts and crafts store and took some pictures. While the image was very cute, I wanted it to be a call to action, so I added a website, www.pigsatrisk.ca, that would take the viewer to the pigs page of the Canadian Coalition for Farm Animals. CCFA is an organization dedicated to promoting the welfare of animals raised for food in Canada through public education, legislative change, and consumer choice. I was also studying art history at Carleton University, and in the fall I decided to launch my Pigs in a Postmodern World project as a way to learn hands-on about modern and contemporary art, while at the same time continuing to advocate for farm animals. At the outset, I was uncertain about the ethics of copying the work of famous artists, but art history was the right discipline in which to learn everything I needed to know about appropriation. Appropriation by artists refers to the practice of quoting, borrowing, or copying images or the style from other works of art or visual culture for use in one's own work. It can also refer to the use of ordinary or found objects. Recontextualization of an image or object provides the work of art with its own unique meaning. Depending on the artist's intent, these works can sometimes be referred to as pastiche or parody. I also learned that copying and emulating the work of other artists has been a common practice since antiquity. The guilds and workshops of the Middle Ages and Renaissance Europe developed artists and artisans through apprenticeships, drawing on the images and techniques from their masters. Art education became more regimented with the introduction of government-sponsored art academies across Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. Artists trained by copying works of art approved by the academy. Although this method of learning diminished with the rise of the avant-garde in the mid-19th century, it was still common for artists to have plaster casts of classical statues in their studios for drawing practice and inclusion in still life compositions. Paul Cézanne's still life with plaster Cupid gives the impression of forms seen from multiple points of view in what he called something other than reality. In my still life, I replaced Cézanne's plaster Cupid with a ceramic sculpture of a pig with wings. For centuries, international trade and colonization resulted in transcultural appropriation, a term coined by Gerardo Mosquera to describe the multiple levels of cultural interchange that occur over time. By the 19th century, Japanese prints, which were themselves showing signs of influence of Western art, became very popular reference materials for artists. Avant-garde artists, including Vincent van Gogh, recognized that the arbitrary perspective, rhythmic outlining of figures, and non-realistic color and semi-abstract design of Japanese prints could add a new expressiveness to their art. In Sao at Sunset, I play with both the name and content of Van Gogh's Sower at Sunset, which is a theme he in turn adopted from Jean-François Millet, a realist artist whom he greatly admired. Concurrently with Japanisme, new color theories, the use of photography, and ready-made paint led to much experimentation with a move away from realism among post-impressionist artists like Georges Seurat. What could be more modern than elegantly dressed people enjoying a leisurely day out on the Ile de Grand Jatte? In this painting, best known for its pointillist style, Seurat deliberately flattens space and arranges shapes decoratively. In my version, two pigs lounge luxuriously in the foreground. French colonialism resulted in the import of many African and transoceanic sculptures and artifacts that influenced artists including Pablo Picasso. In 1907, Picasso produced the most radical painting of the time, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, a portrait of 7 prostitutes displaying stylistic characteristics of archaic Iberian and African sculptures in what would certainly be identified as cultural appropriation today. In my rendition, I play on the French word for female pig, la cochonne, which has the derisive meaning of prostitute or whore when applied to a woman. According to T.A. Brigard, Picasso believed himself to be the embodiment of the primordial artist, and appropriation to be a magical transference of power. While he believed he could unapologetically draw on the works of other artists, he would reprove artists whom he accused of copying from him. I can only imagine his reaction to Les Cochons d'Avignon. Appropriation by artists, as we use the term today, can be positioned in the legacy of Marcel Duchamp's ready-mades and extends to many modern and postmodern movements. A ready-made is defined as one or more ordinary objects presented as artwork by an artist. Although his 1917 urinal entitled Fountain is Duchamp's most famous ready-made, I chose LHOOQ, a pencil reproduction of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, on which he drew a mustache and goatee. When pronounced in French, LHOOQ is a pun for LHOOQUL, translated colloquially as she's got a hot ass. In Oink, I altered a photo of Mona Lisa by adding a pig snout and ears with a felt-tip marker. Duchamp challenged the art world in many ways over his career, but perhaps his greatest influence was in shifting the perception of a copy from a physical process to a conceptual act. In the 1950s and 1960s, the neo-dadists gave the ready-mades new life when they began to assemble found materials into works of art, thereby disrupting the two-dimensional and painterly conventions of abstract expressionism that dominated the post-war art world. Target with Plaster Cast by Jasper Johns plays with the symbolic and indexical nature of signs, in this case a target painted in encaustic wax, combined with sculptural elements of plaster body parts assembled in a wooden box. In my rendition, I use an assemblage of a painted target and pig body parts modeled in clay, with found images of bricks and wood. Like Jasper Johns, Robert Rauschenberg combined imagery from popular culture, found objects, and other materials with painting in what he called combines, which he said act in the gap between art and life. In Estate, Rauschenberg combines disparate images using silkscreen printmaking applied to canvas with added splashes of paint, perhaps quoting the visual vocabulary of abstract expressionism. In Sad State, I emulate his work using a photo collage of found images from media and online exposés of factory farms and slaughterhouses, unified with patches of acrylic paint. By the late 1970s and 1980s, image appropriation became a medium in its own right with the pictures generation, which included artists Cindy Sherman and Barbara Kruger. Cindy Sherman is probably the best known of postmodern appropriationist artists, although both her act of appropriation and her identification as a feminist artist are less obvious than many of her contemporaries. Sherman began her career with her 1977 untitled film still series, a study of female identity formulated in the cinema. Since then, she repeatedly recreates herself into a vast range of stereotypical female identities using fashion, costume, hair, and makeup. Quoting Sherman, who takes her own photographs and who has recently done a series of selfies, my untitled self-portrait in pink pig costume reflects me taking my picture in a mirror. Drawing on her experience in graphic arts, Barbara Kruger uses found photographs and trenchant captions in her work. Your gaze hits the side of my face, critiques the dominant power structure, especially the male gaze, which regards women as passive objects. In Your Gaze Cuts Me Like a Knife, I have used a photograph of Damien Hirst's 1996, This Little Piggy Went to Market, This Little Piggy Stayed at Home, a bisected pig in formaldehyde-filled tanks. Appropriation has become a hallmark of postmodernism by creating conditions of irony, parody, or satire useful in institutional critique and activism. I found my appropriative exploration of modern and contemporary art very inspirational and a way to open difficult conversations. While I became more comfortable using appropriation in my art practice, I grew less comfortable with the fact that I was anthropomorphizing the pig. Pigs often replace humans in my work, and sometimes in very cartoonish ways. Roy Lichtenstein's 1964 "Oh Jeff, I Love You Too, But" fuses the aura of a modernist painting with the mediated look of a cartoon strip. In my version, a lovely pig bearing a strong resemblance to Miss Piggy makes the same declaration, perhaps alluding to her shifting affection from Jeff to Kermit the Frog. Anthropomorphism has long been condemned by many scholars for overexpressing the similarities between humans and animals in ways that can be emotionally manipulative and can cause us to lose sight of the animals themselves. I was worried that my anthropomorphized representations might be doing more harm than good. While farm animals' bodies have been commodified as meat, their representations are also commodified everywhere, especially for the family audience. Pigs, perhaps more than any other farm animals, have been turned into caricatures and Disneyfied in media and cinema. Think of Porky Pig, Miss Piggy, Wilbur, Babe, and Peppa Pig, to name but a few. Nodding to the family film industry, my Wilbur diptych replaces Andy Warhol's Marilyn with Wilbur, the star of the 2006 movie Charlotte's Web. In her book, Animals, Anthropomorphism, and Mediated Encounters, Claire Parkinson acknowledges that in the pejorative sense, anthropomorphism remains to some extent weighed down with associations to childishness, a lack of objectivity, and sentimentality. Conversely, she notes, anthropomorphism that elicits empathy can enable the imagining of another animal's experience and has been linked to pro-environmental behaviors, increased concern for the welfare of animals, and lower meat consumption. Edward Munch's The Scream has become iconic in popular culture and is the stuff of nightmares in horror movies. In my version, the pig screams too, but nobody is listening. Many people like eating meat, but do not like hurting animals. Psychologists call this the meat paradox. Dehumanization and distancing of meat animals plays a crucial role in attenuating the negative feelings when consuming meat. For example, using the term pork instead of pig meat, or thinking of pigs as ugly, dirty, stupid, mean, or promiscuous animals, or just removing them from the countryside. Research recently undertaken by the London School of Economics and Political Science clearly indicates that promoting pigs as friends, not food, results in reduced propensity to eat pork among meat eaters who would normally eat pork. They conclude that empathetically anthropomorphizing the pig, that is, promoting them as intelligent, human-like, feeling, endearing, and cute, overcomes the meat paradox through the generation of feelings of cognitive dissonance and anticipatory guilt. I suggest that pigs in a postmodern world might act similarly on viewers by evoking empathy or feelings of dissonance that might lead to people eating less industrially produced meat. In this series, I directly address factory farming in only a few pieces. You have seen one, Sad State. Although I have never visited a factory farm or abattoir, I did spend some time at a pig farm wandering among a herd of over 200 free-roaming heritage black pigs. 60 pig portraits is a composite of photographs I took at the farm presented in a format after the photographic grid work of Canadian artist Arnaud Moggs. Pigs in a Postmodern World is an ongoing series. Although I've been working on many other projects, I do make time for my pigs every once in a while. You can see the complete gallery of pigs in a postmodern world on my website, artthatmakesadifference.ca, or my other art projects at bethshepherd.ca. Thank you.